I haven't been doing much in the kitchen recently. Mom has her adopted stepdaughter here for the summer, which keeps me from being over here as much. Um, but they're gone for now. And Mom has a recipe. It's actually from the inside of a package of parquet that she's had for decades. It was my grandpa's favorite cookie. Mom used to make it all the time for him. Made it the other day and had a few uh, unhappy occurrences with it. Uh, One was Mom didn't have any margarine in her house, so we used butter, and it butter made it seem too dry. And the other thing was all she had, or what she handed me to use. She and I made this together. What she handed me to use was Guittard milk chocolate chips, and they were fabulous in terms of flavor. However, they were huge, and because they were so large, uh, when it baked, and this is something that I've noticed, I don't know if anybody else has, uh, but when chocolate bakes, it seems to crystallize and it isn't as good. Now, like I said, this was a recipe out of parquet, and it's listing all the name brands for the chocolate and using parquet and all that. Uh, Actually, the peanut butter it doesn't say a name for, so that's kind of interesting. But all that Mom has is great value Walmart brand soda. She has Western Family chocolate chips, and this is actually some she got when her friend went into assisted living. This is the vanilla. It's good. Uh, and the brown sugar and the granulated sugar, I'm sure, are Western Family, both of them. Uh, the flour I actually know is uh, Great Value or Walmart. I think it's just Great Value all-purpose flour. So this recipe originally called for 3/4 of a cup, which is a stick and a half of margarine, and a half cup of peanut butter. And I found that if you put more peanut butter, they stay more moist. And it calls for a cup each of granulated and firmly packed brown sugar. And I've again found there's something echoing in here, that using more brown sugar than the granulated sugar keeps it more moist, more soft, the cookies. Something that I forgot to do that I should have done is preheat the oven. So let's get that started going. Here I am working on the surface of the cooktop because it's a clean surface. Mom has a habit of piling her counters. This kitchen isn't really great for cooking. It's one of the modern kitchens where they don't expect people to actually cook anymore. They want them to just do something prepared. However, that being the case, I'm going to work here as the oven heats. The butter I just barely got out. It needs to be creamed, so I might end up pausing for a bit to do this. And because I've changed this recipe, this is the 3/4 cup measure that I'm using for the peanut butter. And since I changed the sugars from a cup each to 3/4 and a 1 1/4, I'm just going to use the 1/4 cup for that. However, I'm going to pause for a bit, and I'll get right back to it after I get those measured in, so I can get this blended in. I've creamed the butters, the peanut butter, the butter, and the sugars together. I've got the eggs in. I'm now putting the vinegar in, or excuse me, vanilla in. Actually, the reason why I wanted to do this is just a modification of a store-bought recipe. The reason I wanted to do it is because it's amazing to me. You can get mini chips in all kinds of flavors. Mom has some that are gourmet, blueberry or something. Everybody seems to make miniature semi-sweet chips, but they never make the mini milk chocolate chips. And actually, I decided to write a letter to Toll House, mention it. Actually, on their website, on their chips, they have a holiday mix that are green and red that appear to be mini, and that them and the semi-sweet are the only minis that are available. And I've wanted miniature milk chocolate chips for a long time. I'm going to blend this. I'm not going to do it on camera. That's too annoying. And then I'm going to start mixing in the salt, the baking soda, and the flour by hand, probably, or partially by hand. And we will get back to this. When you mix flour, you have to do it slow, or you end up with it all over the place. And I've found that even though I'm going to use the mixer to mix this in, by doing it a little bit by hand first, you eliminate a lot of the mess from the flour. I'm going to turn this on and do this right now, and I'll get back to it as I'm folding in the chips. Now, I know I should have cleaned the beaters before I put the chips in, but I guess I'm going to have to do it by hand. I'm going to fold these in using a squeegee. And then we're going to use air bake pans to do this. Like I said, this was only the generic. Mom usually buys whatever she can find when it's on sale, so she has a little bit of a stockpile in case she wants to make something all of a sudden. Actually, right here, there are Toll House. These are actually butterscotch chips. I wanted it for an address. There's no actual mailing address, just a city and state, but I might be able to find something else, because I do want to mail the letter. I'll include a link to this video as well as the letter. But I think that Toll House will actually do something. They obviously have the means to make miniature chips, but it's just, I've never actually seen any mini milk chocolate chips. Webster store said they have 25 pounds of Hershey's mini chips, but they don't actually show anything to say the size. And I like the chocolate. I prefer smaller pieces of chocolate spread throughout what I'm making instead of having huge chunks of chocolate. And it basically comes from the fact that I don't like the texture of chocolate after it's been in the oven. It seems to dry out and crystallize, and if it's inside the dough, it doesn't. To me, it doesn't appear to do that. And there's got to be some chemistry reason behind why that happens when you add the heat, that it does that. But okay, we got these cleaned up. Now I'm just going to fold, if I can, fold the chips into the dough. I might have to get something more stiff than the squeegee here. maybe a spoon. But I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to put them on a pan. I will be using Mom's air bake pans. They work really well. And we'll get back to it as I get it closer to being. I ended up incorporating the chocolate chips. I used a plastic wooden spoon, and then I ended up using my hand because I just couldn't get it to mix, and there's still more at the bottom than there is at the top. I'm using a cookie scoop that Mom has to do these. They should be just about the right size. I'll have to see. They might be large. I might have to go to the smaller one. But there's you saw that chocolate chip just fall out. There are too many, too large, and they just don't incorporate well. And I really like this recipe. I used to make it all the time. It was my grandfather's favorite. I'm putting these in. They say to bake 350 for 10 to 12 minutes. I do 10 because they, that's again that softer cookie. So I just dropped a chocolate chip and I've got a dog under my foot. So I'm going to do that. We'll get back to it when I pull that out of the... You can see that the chips are still almost falling out of this. They're not incorporating into that dough at all. They actually rattle in the pan. I remembered that these cookies are actually better a little bit smaller, so I tried to use Mom's other cookie scoop. It would have been perfect, but with the way the chips are, it wouldn't push the cookies out, and there's something wrong with the thing, so not going to do that. We have about 3 minutes on the first batch of cookies. I've got 2 pans ready to go. I think the mini chips would make a lot of difference in this, and you could probably get away with only having a cup of chips instead of 2 cups like the recipe calls for. You don't need as many chips as this recipe. I don't think you need as many chips as this recipe calls for. Maybe if I could get mini milk chocolate baking chips, it'd be a different story. But I know with the Guittard, as big as they were, and I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly, G-O-I-T-T-A-R-D, with them as large as they were a real problem. Even these chips at the regular size are a little bit of an issue. But like I said, I'd like to find some mini milk chocolate chips. And I know they're not as common, but this recipe, I've tried it with the mini semi-sweet, and it just doesn't work for this recipe. You need the milk chocolate. And it would be really nice to be able to get milk chocolate miniature chips. This is the first batch out of the oven. It needs to cool on the pan for a couple minutes, then I'll take it off and put it on the cooling racks. That to me is a very large cookie, and that's why I wanted to use the smaller scoop. I guess I could just use a regular spoon. That's how I've always done it in the past, but I was being lazy and didn't want to do more dishes, but I guess I'm going to. On this pan, these two were actually what I attempted to do using the smaller scoop, and that's actually about the size that these cookies should be, is those two right there. You can see it better there. These, look at this, chocolate chip out. Mom's phone's ringing. But these are about the size they should be, in my opinion. Just a nice little bite, one bite more cookie. And like I said, it would be really nice if these had mini Ended up getting out the 2 spoons because the size is better. But you can see the chocolate chips just all over in the bottom there. And this cookie, it's just falling out of it. That was the timer. These larger ones, I actually had to do for a longer time. So they're going for 12 minutes. These smaller ones will only be 10. But yeah, I think the smaller chips would just make this a much easier, see how the chips are just there in the bottom, they're not incorporated into the dough. But that's just me. I am going to finish these up. I just thought I'd share this. I really do like this recipe. It did come from the Parquet package. There is, and it's got my modifications on it. It says Craft Creative Kitchens there at the bottom. I really like the recipe. I just think it would be much better with mini chips and maybe only half a package instead of a package. Maybe my letter to Toll House will do some good. Like I said, I've liked their chips in the past. And that'll be it for now. I'll get back to cooking when I get a chance. This was the last half dozen cookies, and this is what remained in the pan, in the bowl. Doesn't need as many chips as it calls for, and I think it would definitely do better with the mini chips instead of the standard or the larger one. I decided to make those last half dozen cookies and those extra chips into one big cookie. I'm going to put these in. It'll probably take 15 minutes to bake, but I've got another batch in right now, and there's noise, so I'm not going to record more. Thanks for watching Perhaps Cooking. Feel free to share, give me a thumbs up, or subscribe.